Bang. Ladies, gentlemen, fight fans around the globe alike. It is Tuesday, February 25th, and you already know what's up. It's a hot and ready brand new edition of the show that you hopefully have come to know and love from the Loudmouth MMA Network. Hi, everybody. My name is Davidson Baker, and this is the 7th edition of Around the Cage. I am a contributor at Fansided and MyMMAnews.com, as well as the host of this podcast. And I'd like to thank you kindly for making us a part of your day today. I must say right off the bat, I've been incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to be surrounded each and every week by a four-pronged panel that represents some of the sharpest names in the sport. And that being said, this week is no different. We're back with another all-star lineup, with whom it's my pleasure to be joined tonight. For starters, both of these two gentlemen I'll introduce first have been on before. They joined me a few weeks ago. My pleasure to first introduce familiar faces, Loudmouth Network Breakdown podcast host and my MMA DNA, Marcel Dorff. Marcel, what's up, man?
What's up, man? Glad to be back.
Thanks
for having me again.
Absolutely, brother. You can find his stuff at Cage Side Press, The Body Lock, BJPen.com, Fansided, everywhere. Drake Riggs. Drake, what's up, man?
What's up, buddy? Thanks for having me on again. I'm hoping to get at least past the first round this time. That's my main goal for this episode, because I was very disappointed in myself last time, but it was still fun, so I'm glad to be back.
Hey, man, 2 weeks ago, our friend Max Friedman won, and his first time, he was first off. So, you never know.
There's hope.
Sometimes things kind of play out differently. We also have two newcomers to the show this week. Owner at MyMMAnews.com, Eric Kowal, right? That's how you say it, Kowal?
That's it. How are you doing?
Good, my man. Good. And then finally, last but not least, lead combat sports writer for GG Sports and Female Fighting, Danielle Yanofsky. Did I get that right? Danielle Yanofsky?
Yes, you did, sir. Thank you for having me.
Sweet, man. Awesome. All right. So, just a bit of housekeeping I have to do before every episode, kind of go over these rules. It's by far my least favorite part every time, but it's got to be done. Panelists are awarded points not by whether or not I agree with their argument, but rather how well they back their original argument up. 4 questions are asked in round 1, with all 4 panelists presenting and accounting for those said arguments. Following the 4th question, an unlucky member of the panel will hear the Wheel of Fortune boop, and will have to leave. But unfortunately, even though we will say sayonara to them, as indicated with Drake and Marcel here, there's a great chance that they could come back whenever they see fit. For the final round, the scores will reset for both of the finalists, and there will be one final question. The catch is, with that final question, they do not know what it is ahead of time, and only I know, like a secret, per se. Unless I have any questions from the guys, I believe we are ready to get started. Are you guys ready to go?
Ready.
Sweet. And we start outside of the cage this week, north of the border, around a la Montreal, where the consensus greatest welterweight champion of all time this week hung it up for good. George St. Pierre announcing his retirement, kind of on the heels of not being able to lock in or secure a fight that he and his team were seeking for against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Drake, we'll go ahead and start with you. Now that GSP's hung it up for good, how will you remember him now that he's gone?
Simply as the GOAT. I'm just going to throw it right at you. I think that he is definitely, he's my number one anyways, of all time, the best fighter there's ever been. Just a true sportsman, really, an athlete, I think is a good way to describe him overall. And something that I feel like he always really prided himself in, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And, Captain Canada, of course. And he was just one of those guys who he set out to do things that other people couldn't or wouldn't maybe attempt. And he achieved pretty much all that he could. I mean, he beat everybody he's ever fought. I mean, he's got 2 losses, but he beat those guys, avenged them. I mean, he's the best to ever do it. And his story is just incredible, I mean, becoming such a great wrestler without having any background. I mean, I could go on and on about GSP, but yeah, he's just the best, I think.
Daniel.
I think he's one of the greatest of all time, and you can't repeat anything that he has done. I think that the only one that comes close to him is Daniel Cormier. As far as we know, they've both done it clean. They are ones to not complain about anything else in between. And I think that his overall record speaks for itself. My lasting image of him was at UFC 217, my first event I ever attended as a fan. And it was one of the best events I've ever been to. The main card, top to bottom, was on fire, and GSP defeating Bisping was one of the greatest moments you could ever have in UFC history after coming back after a while away.
Sweet. Marcel.
Yeah, you can't argue with what Drake said. I think GSP is arguably the GOAT, but I think it has to do with your preference, who you like more, because there are more names to come to mind who can be the GOAT, I think. But I definitely think GSP is definitely 1, 2, or 3 in my opinion. What I think about him: complete mixed martial artist, on the ground strong, stand up strong. You just can't argue with him. He was the most dominant welterweight champion in the UFC. Woodley is trying to do it now, I think, but GSP. Come on, man. I mean, GSP is GSP, and you can't you can argue, but in my opinion, he's the GOAT and definitely welterweight. Yeah, that's my opinion. I think for the diehard fans, he will always get the respect he deserves. For the less diehard, let's say the casual fan, he's harder to get support because his wrestling base is so strong, and I think that's not very appealing to the public. But in my opinion, he's amazing.
Last but not least, Eric.
I mean, what can be said that hasn't already been said? But the question was how we remember him. I think a lot of fans, myself including, are going to remember him as the guy who controversially won over Johnny Hendricks and then walked away from the sport, kind of forever changing the landscape of the UFC welterweight picture, and then coming back to defeat Bisping at middleweight, and then again vacating that title. And then when he has the opportunity to fight Khabib, the fight doesn't come through. But the day that he announces he's going to hold a press conference for retirement, Khabib comes out and says, "Hey, come out and wait. We can do this down the road." And GSP still goes through with the retirement. So I don't know. I mean, where does he land in the best overall ever? He's right there, but the Khabib fight was there. It could have happened. I mean, it wasn't on the table right away, but it could have happened down the road, and he chose to retire. So that's how I'll remember him.
Very interesting points from you guys. Marcel with 8, the other 3 with 7, and we move on back to Inside the Cage. Pretty fun show in Prague this weekend. Saw some awesome knockouts. That Dwight Grant knockout, man, what a punch! What a right hand he landed on Pedersoli. I digress. Thiago Santos, the topic of conversation, making a case potentially enough to earn him the next 205-pound title shot. I'll go in reverse this time and start with Eric. Do you agree that finish of Jan Blachowicz was enough to earn him the next shot at the light heavyweight crown?
I mean, you kind of have to think so. I mean, if you look about who's fighting in the main event this coming weekend, challenging for the title, it's a guy who just moved up recently from 185, and Santos holds a win over him, Anthony Smith. I think he's going into this fight with only a 3-fight win streak. So, Santos has win over Anders, Manoa, Jan Blachowicz this past weekend. So why not? I mean, some people are questioning why Anthony Smith is getting the title shot this weekend. So I think so. I think he deserved it.
Marcel.
Yeah, does he deserve it? Yeah, I think he does. He did pretty well, I think, with a TKO against Jan Blachowicz. But it's actually what's John Jones is going to do, man, next. I mean, and what is Dominic Reyes going to do in this fight against Volkan Ozdemir? I mean, if Dominic Reyes comes out with flying colors, what is the UFC going to do, right? I mean, Thiago Santos, Dominic Reyes would make sense if, for example, Cormier-Jones fight, the third one, will happen. You never know what the UFC is going to do, The UFC will always go with the money fight, so I don't know if they're going with Santos, but it depends also what Jones wants, how many times he wants to fight this year. He said he wants it at least 3 times, I think, or he said even 4. I don't remember exactly anymore. But I think that's what's up to. I think he deserves it, but if he gets it, I don't know.
For sure. Daniel.
100% yes. If you look at his past few fights, he's 4-1 and 8-1 in overall. He has straight up power. He's the most dominant contender I can think of in a while. If you look at contenders right now, the only person that comes close is Corey Anderson, and that's it. I truly believe that they should go the anti-Curtis Blades route and give the guy who deserves it the title shot. And it's the most logical situation or a logical picture that you can think of. But unfortunately, we know that the UFC does not think about logic and they think about money in this sense.
Drake.
Yeah, pretty much bouncing off what Daniel said. When you look at specifically light heavyweight, he's the guy. That's the guy you're going with, because even Blachowicz, if he won, he deserved it too, because both of those guys putting the streaks together, it would have been 5 in a row for Jan if he would have won, and he's never been finished at all, I don't think. So that was the first time, and Santos did it impressively. But I think also, like Marcel mentioned, it kind of depends on DC. And I mean, not to sleep on Anthony, but assuming Anthony loses, then you got Jones, and then depending on DC, is put him out of the picture. UFC 237 needs a main event. Brazilian. Thiago Santos is Brazilian. John wants to stay active. That's the fight we're going to get. So, I mean, every single UFC event in Brazil, except for one, which was like the first one when they did tournament style, had a Brazilian in the main event. And Santos is one of the only guys they can put right now.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Marcel 16, Daniel Drake 15, Eric 14. Moving on to question number 3. Let's look ahead now that we've talked a little bit about things that have been going on in the past. Holy smokes, what a fight card we have in store for us on Saturday night in Vegas. UFC 235 is Saturday night, and man, there are great fights from Fight Pass to pay-per-view all the way up the board. And obviously the 2 title fights at the top are certainly what are going to excite the masses this weekend. Jones versus Smith at light heavyweight for the belt, and Woodley versus Usman at welterweight. We'll kind of mix things around right here. We'll start with Daniel this time. Obviously the 2 title fights sparkle a little bit more than anything else, but what's the most exciting fight on the card for you outside of those 2 fights with UFC gold on the line on Saturday?
Jeremy Stevens versus Zabit Magomedsharipov. It's one of the most enticing matchups you could really think of. Zabit turned a random fight against Kyle Bochniak into a fight of the year contender. And Stevens was on a roll before losing to Aldo, and he stayed about taking his life, but he's back in the cage now, so you know where his head is at right now. You know he's a man on a mission to get a victory back. If I didn't have to say that, there's a whole other opportunities for people to take over this card. You have Weili Zhang against Tisha Torres. You have Poliana Viana looking to create some new blood, new life in the strawweight division. You have Mickey Gall in action. I truly believe that he can be a true commodity in the UFC. I know he hasn't shown it recently, but you never really know with him, especially with his defensive capability. And last but not least, Johnny Walker can always surprise you.
Does a great worm as well. Marcel.
I want to go with the early prelim headliner with Charles Byrd against Adnan Shabazian. I think that's a great fight. Shabazian coming off that split decision win against Darren Stewart, while Byrd coming off the TKO loss against Darren Stewart. But he did very well in that fight until he got clipped with the shot and he got finished. Shabazian, besides his UFC debut, only knockouts on his record from Dana White's Contender Series. Byrd as well. Amazing fighter for this MMA fighter, Shabazian, out of Glendale Fight Club. This is going to be a stand-up war, I think, and this is going to be great. Maybe Charles Byrd can catch him on the ground at a certain moment of time, but this is going to be a war, and I expect this to be or Zabit against Jeremy Stevens, or this fight to be fight of the night, one of those 2.
Apologize for making one of the rest of you go last again. I didn't realize it, but Eric.
So I'm going to go with Jeremy Stevens versus Zabit. It's just an incredible fight. Jeremy Stevens always brings an incredible fight to the UFC. He's never been in a boring fight. And then on top of those remarks that were made this week, I think there's going to be a lot of eyes looking on him, coming off the loss against Aldo. He announced that, after that loss, he was contemplating suicide. So I think there's going to be a lot of attention on that fight. But don't sleep on the Mickey Gall-Diego Sanchez fight. I'm friends with Mickey. I've known him for a while. I've been following him since he was an amateur. But Diego Sanchez, we're talking the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 winner. I mean, that guy, he's been in the UFC forever. So, and he's been there for a reason. So those are both great fights. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to say the Stevens fight.
And Drake.
Got to go with Ben Askren's debut, man. I still doesn't feel like it's even happening to me yet, because I remember being in high school with my buddies, just and thinking about it, like, man, it would be so awesome to see GSP versus Ben Askren, Hendricks versus Askren, whatever. So I just cannot wait. You're gonna get this. They give him probably one of the hardest matchups he could have got for his debut. You know, perfect striker versus grappler matchup to kick things off. For him. So I just cannot wait to see how that goes down. And then, I got to throw a mention to Zhang versus Torres. I think that Wiley's really got potential to be a future champion. And I mean, she's got a whole entire country on her back. This is going to be the coming out party for her. I think it's a perfect time. Main card, biggest card of the year so far. So I'm kind of cheating and picking those two fights.
And to quickly piggyback off you just said, if I could have any insertion into that, Wiley Zhang kind of representing the new age of Chinese MMA that the UFC is really going after. Also, no one mentioning Garbrandt Munoz kind of goes into a testament as to how great this card is. Obviously excited about and no one mentioning Stamen Perez as well. I mean, great card. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have Drake and Marcel tied at 24, Daniel and Eric tied at 22. So moving in to the final round of round one, and the UFC 236 main event, as well as location rumors had been swirling for a while. I know they were saying Abu Dhabi. A couple episodes ago, I asked for the final question and had to even give the two beneficiaries, Max and Jason, a little bit of time to think when I asked them what they thought the location of UFC 236 would be. Gotta be honest, one of them said Atlanta. Can't remember who it was, but they hit the head on the nail. They're heading to the State Farm Arena in Atlanta with Holloway and Poirier, running it back from a fight 7 years in the making. So we will go ahead and start with Marcel on this one. UFC 236 main event, Holloway and Poirier. What's your level of excitement surrounding this fight? Include your feeling, obviously, and I know how you feel on interim titles when giving a score in between 1 and 10.
1 and 10 between about the fight or just about the title?
Just the excitement of it overall, but include like how you feel about interim titles to kind of levy your excitement.
Listen, man, I love the fight. I mean, it's good to see Max Holloway debut against Dustin Poirier a few years ago, and both guys have so much improved. Definitely Max, I think he improved so much. He looks unstoppable right now. So I love to see that match, right? I'm not a big fan of interim titles, even not right now. I think 2 interim titles on one card is a little bit much for me, but I understand that the UFC wants to attract the casual fan, and they put out the belts like, it's for a belt, But at the end of the day, the UFC says you're just next in line. The belt doesn't say anything. So why would me consider it a belt? That's my opinion. I really like the fight match. I really like the matchup. I don't like that Tony Ferguson doesn't get the opportunity. I think he deserves it. Besides what all went in the back room, what Dana said and all, but I really love to see Ferguson against Poirier. I think that would be perfect fight to make. But let's see what happens, man. I'm always pumped for fights. So I definitely not want to miss this one.
Eric.
Gotta agree with Tyron Woodley. He said this week that the interim title is the biggest joke on earth. I feel like Oprah Winfrey's in Dana White's office saying, you get a belt, you get a belt, you get a belt. I mean, it's pointless. Think about Colby Covington won a title last year. He's still carrying the thing around. He's not even the interim champion anymore. What's the point of it? Tony Ferguson was an interim champion. Not the interim champion anymore. So it's kind of, I get the point of like putting on fights and entertaining the fans, but it's a money sport now, and the interim title means nothing. I mean, these guys can fight for the belt, but doesn't mean that they're going to be the next in line for the title shot. So I'm not a fan of it.
Drake.
So honestly, I'm at probably like a 5 on the excitement for this fight. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm excited for it, but I'm comparing it to what we could have got with Poirier and Ferguson or Holloway and Ferguson. And I think Holloway Ferguson is literally the best matchup that you could possibly make out of any fight right now. It's just guaranteed amazing violence, And then Poirier Ferguson is what makes sense with Habib out of the picture. So, this fight is just really just kind of out there for me, just out of nowhere. It'll be cool to see him rematch. That's a cool thing about it. But I think that Max has progressed just so much that it's just going to be totally, it's not going to look the same fight. That's for sure. That's obvious, but yeah. And then as for interims, yeah, just stupid. I mean, I was going to be more fine with interim in the case of Ferguson and Poirier, because they're the lightweights. But then you bring in the featherweight undisputed champion. He can potentially be the undisputed champion of featherweight and then the interim lightweight champion. That just sounds stupid as fuck to me. So, yeah, that's just entirely weird. Lightweight it's a mess.
Yeah.
Do we have to edit that?
What's up?
Yeah, that'll bleep me.
That's not my job. Thank God. Daniel, last but not least, go ahead.
I'm giving it a 7.5, just based off the matchup alone. Holloway versus Poirier can actually be really good. What I don't like are interim titles. Interim titles just take away from the overall excitement or the legitimacy of title reigns. Like you have Max Holloway, who's the featherweight champion, who's holding up the division to go for another title that's not even a legitimate title. You're pulling a Conor McGregor. We thought the featherweight division was safe when McGregor got rid of the title, when he was gone. Now we're doing it all over again. And at the end of the day, Max Holloway is going to be the best. But Poirier deserves his own chance at the title, as does Tony Ferguson. I am tired of interim titles. It reminds me of boxing with so many damn titles that make no sense, that everyone's trying to put them all together. What's the point if there are just 6 more added? There's like 1 more added the next year and then 1 more added the next year. There's no point. Overall, the card is exciting, but you're adding another interim title to an interim title fight that shouldn't even happen to begin with. Gastelum versus Adesanya should be for the regular middleweight title. I truly believe Whittaker should be stripped after not being able to defend it for a year, regardless of circumstances. And at this point, Holloway versus Poirier should not be a thing for an interim lightweight title. Just have it as a regular fight. You don't really need a title to make it fun.
All right. Interesting stuff. Just want to say real quick before we say goodbye to somebody, great job done by all 4 of you. Once again, every single week it's very difficult to narrow it down to who I have to say goodbye to. However, we will move on with Marcel 31, Eric and Drake at 30, Daniel 1 point behind the pace at 29. Daniel, I appreciate you coming on, man. I know we tried to do this a couple times before, but I'd definitely like to have you on again in the future if you're interested. Any last things from you?
I'm definitely interested. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's get rid of interim titles and let's go Mickey Gall.
All right, man. Hey, you have a good one, bro. Enjoy the fights this weekend.
You too, guys. Enjoy.
Yep.
Peace.
Yeah, man.
All right. It's so annoying having to wait for somebody to hang up. I don't know why Skype makes that a thing, but we move on. 3 left. Marcel 1 point ahead. We move on to Bellator over across the pond in Ireland this past weekend. The brash and kind of outlandish nature of James Gallagher has certainly rubbed certain people off the wrong way. Myself included a little bit the night of the Ricky Bandejas fight. I do also believe, without going into too much detail, that Bellator kind of screwed themselves throughout that in basically promoting Caldwell versus Gallagher as the next title fight. I don't know what they were thinking. However, all of that being said, Drake, we'll go ahead and start with you. Is James Gallagher, quote unquote, back after his first round submission this weekend over Stephen Graham, or did he just crush a can that Bellator put right in front of him?
Well, I don't know if it's fair to say that he was there, I guess you could say, before losing. Obviously Bellator was pushing him in that direction of next guy, he's our next big star and he's ready for this title shot. But yeah, I don't think that would have gone too well against Caldwell. So I don't think that he's back just yet, because if you look at Stephen Graham, I think that they set him up. The show was in Ireland, first of all. So it's not like they're going to give him somebody that he could potentially make him two losses in a row. And Stephen Graham, no disrespect to him, but he hasn't really beaten anybody himself just yet. This was a rebound that was made for Gallagher so that people could try and forget about the Ricky Bandejas fight. He's still super young, has a lot of work to do. I don't think it just let this guy build up. We kind of saw Pico just get the same kind of treatment, getting derailed a bit. Those are two totally different type of fighters though, and Pico's shown he's got a lot more potential, I think, than Gallagher. Obviously, potential with Gallagher, but there's levels to this, and they got to just take it easy, I think. So, not back yet, but was never there, in my opinion.
For sure. Eric?
He beat who? On what network? I mean, how many people saw it? To your point about, coming back from a loss over Bandejas and trying to get people to forget. Well, they didn't do a very good job of doing that, because who in the United States watched this fight? So, I don't know. I think they missed the mark with that one. If they were trying to get him back in the win column and get him back in the public eye, they didn't do a very good job of that. Was he there before? I don't know. They certainly marketed him as that. It kind of has like this Bellator's version of Conor McGregor hype. But beyond that, they need to give him better competition, and I think they're just completely missing the mark with how they promote this guy.
Marcel?
Yeah, is he back? No. Was he ever there? I mean, Bellator was heavy promoting him. I didn't buy it at all that first time, and I still don't buy it. I mean, for me, he is talented. Definitely, he is good on the ground. He has solid ground game, but he is not at the level he thinks he is, and that Bellator thinks he is. I mean, we saw it against Ricky Bandejas. They thought he would have a walk in the park for some reason, but everybody who watches CFFC knows how good Ricky Bandejas is, and that was a tough opponent for him. So, and besides that, I'm really not into that trash talking thing, that fake kind of stuff. I mean, be yourself. Don't try to be popular in front of a camera. Just work hard. Just show it in the cage. That's all you have to do. And I want to take a moment to also give my condolences to James Gallagher, who had his grandfather passing away today, which is very sad news. And yeah, I mean, I wish him all the best, but I don't like the bullshit and all the trash talk he's doing.
For sure. And once again, making it difficult on me. But hey, man, that's how this goes. Moving on to the final round, will be Drake and Marcel, 38, Eric, 37. Right behind by 1 point, man.
All right.
But I'd like to thank you for coming on, and I'm sure you and I will be in touch next couple of days, because I have an idea for something to write this weekend. So you and I will definitely be in touch.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you. You have a good one.
Take it easy.
Bye.
See you later, man.
All right. We are down to the final two.
Oh, we made it.
It's like the gates of heaven. I'm like, oh.
I know. The MMA gods are smiling down. My prayers are.
We move on to the final question, and I have to say, I have been reprimanded a little bit in terms of letting guys think a little bit about this final question, given the nature that it is a little bit of a mystery, but I've also been given a route to go along if said problem comes up. That being said, for you guys, if you guys do need a second to think, let me know. We move on to kind of Bellator and UFC kind of news. The Nevada State Athletic Commission levied down the punishment for one Dylan Dennis this week. $7,500, I believe, off the top of my head, and a 7-month fine, retroactive to the suspension. I'll just leave it plain and simple. We will start with Drake and ask, did they get it right? You guys have answers pretty much ready to go?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Go right ahead.
Yeah, this is a weird one. I as much as I'm not a fan of Dylan Dennis, and his similar to Gallagher methods, as Marcel was mentioning in the last question, Yeah, I don't necessarily think this makes sense, especially when you look at the other fines. I mean, I guess specifically Habib's, because Javier Mendez pointed this out recently, last week or something, saying how Habib can get a 6-month suspension, get it reduced to that at the lowest, which makes it less than Danis's. But Habib's the one who literally jumped out and attacked him. I mean, sure, there's the instigations that could have been made from Danis where he was yelling. The only person I've heard say that is, I think it might have been Joe Rogan or somebody, but not a lot of people said that Danis was talking shit to him, which, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he was. But yeah, when you look at that and how Habib can get his to lower than Danis's, that just kind of seems really weird to me. It's like they're trying to make the punishments balanced with everybody who was entirely involved, I think.
Yeah.
Because, there was Abu Bakar, Nurmagomedov, and then Takugov, and then Habib. Those were the three from their side, and then it was Connor and Danis. So yeah, it just seems kind of like they're trying to balance it out and make one side not seem worse than the other. But when you break it down, I don't think it's really right for Danis to get longer time and that much money lost.
For sure. Marcel?
Guys, are we all forgetting Dylan Dennis is the co-owner of Bellator? This scratch for him, man. Come on, what are we talking about, man? This guy can even buy Bellator. What are we talking about, man? Who cares? What's this kind of question? Come on. I mean, yeah, I don't agree with the punishment. I think it's a little bit too much, but hey, he wants to do big. He can do big, man. Why not? I mean, it's nothing for him. He maybe gives some extra 2K to the commission, to show, here, I'm Dylan Dennis. I'm just doing it, coming with my fur and all this kind of stuff, man. But it's a little bit bullshit that punishment. But man, what the hell? Who cares? I don't think he cares. And if he can't pay it, Connor will pay it for him. So let's be honest here. I mean, it's literally nothing bad, and he can fight pretty soon again. So yeah, let's don't make this too much of a problem. And I also don't think the media is all over it all the time. Like, oh my God, and I'm like, yeah. So he's a 1-0 MMA fighter. Yeah, and he's Conor McGregor's teammate. He's a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter, of course, but he still has to pay his dues in MMA. So I don't know why everybody's all over it. It's all about the clicks, right? It's all about the clicks.
It's all about those things.
That's all.
Clickety-clack.
All right, guys. Fantastic job by both of you once again, and we crown this week's winner all the way from Netherlands, Marcel. Drake, dude, you're almost there.
I know. Hey, this is redemption enough for me. At least I lost to Marcel.
Marcel, as the winner, you're the beneficiary of what they call on Around the Horn FaceTime. If you have anything you're fired up about this week, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Hey, man, thanks for having me again, guys. Always awesome. Max, this one is for you, man. keep this around the cage. Hi, man. I mean, getting the breakdown for the UFC, Loudmouth MMA on top. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me again, man. And always, Davidson, always a pleasure to be here. And Drake, much love to you too as well, man.
Yeah, brother.
Love your insights, everything. Thank you so much.
And these two are aware of a little secret I have going on. I'm going to be posting some pictures here in the coming weeks of the best screenshots from around the cage for the first couple months.
Meme out there.
Oh no, I will. I will, and I will credit you for creation. I promise.
Can I give a tip to the people? They should check the Davidson and me when he posted it when we talk about the Khabib versus Conor fight. The aftermath, and you should check that thumbnail from that one.
Yeah, that thumbnail is pretty crazy. That thumbnail is pretty great. We'll let people kind of digress it on its own, and it's easy to find because this podcast, for those listening, can now be found on my personal YouTube channel, Davidson Baker, or The Bottom Line. You could look either of those things up, and it will come up. That thumbnail will be there, as well as this episode. For these guys and myself, we'll be back next week with a whole lot to talk about on the heels of the 2 title fights. And until then, so long.